Welcome to another Hornbill TV special, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ngullie. I hope you guys are having a great Wednesday over there. The rains have begun and our roads and low-lying areas seem to have started looking a bit anxious, considering how crazy things can get when waters flood in during rainy seasons. It'll be good to clear the drains. The first session of the 14th Nagaland Legislative Assembly may have spoiled the moods of many of our women in Nagaland. In an absurd way, the threat of violence and full-scale community mayhem may have been pacified for now. Most of you may remember the depressing weeks in the 2017 protests when the protests led to violence in Dimapur. As you know, the State Assembly has repealed the Nagaland Municipal Act 2001. This has effectively pacified the community leaderships that have constantly stood in opposition to conducting the municipal elections with the 33% reservation of seats for women in tow. It has also effectively reinstated the status quo on the issue of women's representation in the municipal establishments in Nagaland. This is a very complex subject. Its internal narrative is much more multifaceted than simple political posturing. Today, let's examine the various aspects of the resolution that the State Assembly took and the way forward for women who continue to seek representation in the municipal establishments in the state. Let's begin with the statement of the resolution that was passed yesterday. I like the way that the Assembly organized the wording and the syntax of the statement. The statement said the House has noted the stiff voices of opposition to the urban local bodies elections by the tribal bodies, civil society organizations, and every section of the society. For those of you who have studied English semantics and technical grammar, you will recognize the use of an entirely extremely strong adjective here that is seeking to modify the determining noun, stiff. The Assembly could have simply said the House has noted the opposition to the elections. In fact, it wrote stiff. In fact, the entire text of the resolution is covered in explanatory, emotive language. The use of flowing modifiers and adjectives are not a normal feature of stiff, upper-lipped languages used by government and legislative entities. There might have been two possible reasons here for the way the Assembly used the language in the resolution. First, and I'm just believing this might be one of the reasons. First, the person who copy-edited the resolution before it went to the Assembly table wrote it too casually, or he was in such a rush that he wrote as he thought instead of thinking as he wrote. But why was such an emotive syntax used when you could simply have cut to the chase and got yourself to the point? In my opinion, the language that was used in the Assembly statement resolution was not so much a list of explanatory exposition. More than that, it was primarily a statement before the judiciary overseers to convince them why the Assembly was compelled to repeal the act. So this was not necessarily for the people or even for the members of the Assembly here. It was primarily for the judiciary. That's what I believe, why the government used such a kind of language. You need a force of conviction in the way you present your language. That is important. You need to show emotions to colorize the basis of your decisions. You need to press into the basis of your argument to actually convince the other side. In countries such as India, where a long list of appellate judicial remedies exist for both institutions and citizens alike, you just can't do or say something and not have an explanation for it. You have to be ready for any potential response, for example, from the judicial guardians. The reason is this: what if the action of the assembly was not in accordance with the Constitution of India? I believe the question is relevant, especially because the 33% reservation for women have strong components that appeal to the questions of gender equality, opportunity, and representations. So the entire time I was reading the statement of the assembly, I kept thinking our MLAs and ministers in the assembly are not reading this resolution out to their assembly colleagues. Actually, they are in fact reading it out to the media and the judiciary. That was my thought. But the court cannot do much when the executive repeals an act at this point. So why did you have to bother so much? There are two reasons. It can't, but it can also. If an action of the executive goes against the Constitution of India, it can actually act in. But then again, if you see precedents, in March 2021, the Supreme Court of India found no harm in state legislative assemblies passing resolutions against central laws. The court was noting the states of Kerala and West Bengal passing resolutions against the controversial Citizenship Amendment Act, or even the farm laws. In fact, please notice the state assembly resolutions are something that is in the level of opinions only, according to the judiciary. A bench of the Supreme Court had said during the time that resolutions are merely opinions of the majority members of a legislative assembly, and they do not have the force of law. Of course, the Nagaland Municipal Act has been repealed now, and there isn't space for a review at this point, the way we see it. But still, you need to cover all the corners if you want to make sure that there will be people who might seek a judicial remedy in this regard. In fact, again, if any law is found beyond or against the provisions of the Constitution, then the law can be declared unconstitutional or illegal by the judiciary. The power of judicial review is actually conferred on the Supreme Court by the Indian Constitution through Article 13. So the Assembly might have been playing safe with this language. Second, the House has also taken note that the implementation of the Nagaland Municipal Act 2001 has always been fraught with much controversy due to the public's perception that the act runs contrary to the spirit of Article 371A. It states that no law of the Parliament can be imposed on the state of Nagaland contrary to their unique customary practices and cultural dispensations. It is interesting that Minister K.G. Kenya used the words peacemakers to describe women in Nagaland. Kenya remarked that because special provisions have been provided to the people by Article 371A, the act of the Parliament cannot be segregated. That is something to remember. Based on Article 371A, he said that it would be best for the state to have an own system in line with the Act. The minister said women in Naga society are regarded as peacemakers for the community, and privileges are accorded to them in this regard. Therefore, reservation quotas impact Naga social practices, the minister had told the assembly earlier. The minister had also cited the example of the Ministry of Rural Development, on which they have allowed the local bodies to go hand in hand with its laws. Liberty should be allowed with the urban local bodies as well, the minister had said in the assembly. So what now? Where do we go from here? There is no other way for the elections because the Nagaland Municipal Act has already been repealed in its entirety. I talked to my uncle, who is an advocate, for his opinion about the way forward now. There will be no elections to the municipal institutions and urban local bodies in Nagaland, he said, because the law that enforced the elections has already been removed. If there would be any kind of elections for the urban bodies, it will only be by introducing again a new legislation in the state assembly, the way the Nagaland Municipal Act did. So he said until then, the urban decision-making bodies will have to be run by the government. So that's what he said. So what do we see in regard to women in Nagaland now that the act has been repealed? And what does it speak about women in Nagaland seeking greater political representation? No doubt it will be a setback for them, ladies and gentlemen. The movement for a greater say in the developmental and administrative affairs of any political society has always been a very dicey and sensitive issue. That is not to say women aren't growing in political spheres across the world. In fact, as of January 2023, data by the UN Women shows that women represent approximately 22.8% of cabinet members who are heading ministries or leading a policy area. There are only about 13 countries in which women hold 50% or more of cabinet ministers' positions leading in certain policy areas. In regard to women in national parliaments across the world, only 26.5% of parliamentarians in single or lower houses are women, which is about 11% up in 1995. For local governments, data from 136 countries show that women constitute nearly 3 million or 34% of elected members in local deliberative bodies. So what do these numbers mean? It means that generally speaking, gender-based reservations may have contributed to progress of women over the years. In countries with legislated candidate reservations, women's representation is about 5% points and 7% points higher in parliaments and local governments respectively, compared to countries that have no such reservation legislations. So for now, at least for Nagaland, it will be interesting to see what kind of social and political implications the repeal of the Nagaland Municipal Act would have on the Nagaland story. Thank you for watching Hornbill TV. I'm Ngullie. See you next time.